Have you ever sat in your car after work, engine still running, just staring at nothing for a minute before you go inside? Not because the day was terrible, just because somewhere in that silence, you're doing the math again, calculating how many more years of this, how many more mornings of the same alarm, how many more decades before the word optional applies to any part of your schedule. My name is Jordan, and I need to tell you something that most retirement advice deliberately obscures. Replacing your salary with dividends isn't some distant fantasy that requires decades of deprivation. The timeline is shorter than you think, but the reason most people never get there has nothing to do with income or intelligence. It's because they're aiming at the wrong milestone, measuring the wrong metrics, and mistaking motion for momentum. Here's what conventional wisdom tells you. Save 15% of your income, max out your 401k, hope the market cooperates, and maybe by 65, you'll have enough to stop working. But here's the contrarian truth nobody wants you to see too early. The path to financial independence isn't about accumulating the biggest account balance. It's about engineering a specific monthly cash flow that covers your actual expenses. And once you reframe the goal that way, the timeline collapses dramatically. Most people think you need $2 million to generate $3,200 a month. They see that number, feel the weight of it, and quietly resign themselves to the long haul. But that assumption is built on outdated withdrawal rates and conservative models designed to protect institutions, not liberate individuals. What if I told you that with the right structure, you could hit that monthly number with a portfolio closer to $700,000? Still substantial. But suddenly, it shifts from impossible to I can see the path. That realization is the invisible threshold. It's the moment when retirement stops being an age and becomes a math problem you can actually solve. Before that moment, you're wandering, contributing to accounts, hoping it all works out, but with no clear picture of what enough actually looks like. After that moment, you're building. Every contribution has a purpose. Every decision either accelerates the timeline or delays it. And that clarity, that shift from vague hoping to deliberate construction changes everything. Think of it like navigation. Before you understand the target, you're driving in the general direction of someday, adjusting based on how you feel, reacting to advice that may or may not apply to your situation. After you lock in the target, $3,200 a month from dividends, you have coordinates. You can calculate distance. You can measure progress. You can see, with uncomfortable clarity, which choices move you closer and which ones steal years. Here's the psychological shift that happens at that threshold. Before, you're operating in what I call fog mode. Every expense feels justified because the goal is so abstract. Scarcity thinking distorts perception. You're either depriving yourself or you're living with no middle ground. Mental bandwidth is consumed by guilt about spending and anxiety about saving. You're reactive, bouncing between extremes, never quite sure if you're doing enough. After you cross into clarity mode, decisions become cleaner. You're not guessing. You know exactly how much you need to invest monthly to hit the target in 10 years versus 15 years versus 20 years. The same purchases that used to trigger internal debate now resolve instantly because you can see their cost in time. That new couch? That's 3 months. That vacation package? That's 5 months. Not judging, just seeing. And seeing changes behavior faster than willpower ever could. Let me walk you through the math, because this is where it gets real. To generate $3,200 per month, you need $38,400 annually. If you build a diversified dividend portfolio, yielding 5.5%, a realistic, sustainable rate using a mix of dividend aristocrats, REITs, and stable high yielders, you need roughly $698,000 invested. $700,000. That's the number. Not $2 million, not $1.5 million. $700,000 generating 5.5% gives you $38,500 a year, or $3,208 per month. Now, here's where the timeline compresses. Let's say you start with $20,000 already invested. You commit to investing $2,000 per month, aggressive, yes, but achievable if you make structural life changes, not just trim daily expenses. Assuming a 7% average annual return from dividend growth and reinvestment, you hit $700,000 in roughly 17 years. 17 years. Not 30, not 40, less than 2 decades. And you've replaced a median salary with passive income. But here's the part that accelerates everything. If you increase contributions by just 10% annually, as your income grows, redirecting raises instead of inflating lifestyle, that timeline drops to 14 years. Increase it by 15% annually, and you're looking at 12 years. 12 years from now, you could be done, not retiring to do nothing, retiring to choose, to work on projects that matter, to say no without consequence, to negotiate from a position of complete financial independence. This is where identity transformation begins. You stop being someone who works because they have to. You become someone building an exit. And that shift in self-perception changes how you show up everywhere. Discipline stops feeling like sacrifice. It feels like agency. Delayed gratification isn't deprivation, it's deliberate design. You trust yourself differently because every month you watch the system you built move you closer to a finish line you can actually see. Opportunities start replacing crises. A sudden car repair used to derail your month. Now it's an annoying detour, not a catastrophe. A chance to switch careers used to feel financially reckless. Now it's a conversation you can actually have, because your timeline isn't entirely dependent on climbing one corporate ladder. The same life events, completely different emotional weight. But let's be direct about something. The leverage here doesn't come from skipping lattes. It comes from the structural decisions most people make once and never revisit. The apartment you choose, the car you finance, the city you live in. These aren't daily choices, they're foundational choices that either align with your timeline or quietly sabotage it. Consider housing. 2 people earn $80,000 annually. One rents a place for $2,500 a month because it's convenient, modern, nice. The other chooses a place for $1,800 and invests that $700 monthly difference into dividend stocks. Over 15 years, the first person has spent $450,000 on rent. The second person has also paid rent, but they've built a portfolio worth roughly $210,000, generating over $960 monthly in dividends. That $700 decision, repeated monthly, cuts years off the timeline. The same principle applies to transportation. Financing a $50,000 car with an $800 monthly payment versus buying a $25,000 reliable car outright and investing that $800. Over 12 years, one path leaves you with a depreciating asset and zero portfolio growth. The other builds over $190,000 in dividend-generating investments. That single decision car choice can be the difference between retiring at 52 or 57. And this is where career power begins to shift in ways you don't expect. Once your dividend income covers even 30% of your monthly expenses, something subtle but profound happens. You stop negotiating from fear. You start negotiating from leverage. A lowball offer doesn't sting, it's just information. A toxic work environment doesn't trap you, it's a problem you can afford to solve by leaving. The confidence that comes from knowing you're not entirely dependent on any single employer changes your posture, your tone, your willingness to advocate for yourself. People notice. Managers sense it. Clients respond to it. Opportunities start appearing because you're no longer radiating desperation. You're radiating optionality. And optionality is magnetic. But here's the part where most people sabotage their own timeline. And I need you to hear this with absolute clarity. They hit a milestone. Maybe their portfolio reaches $200,000. Maybe their monthly dividends hit $800, and they treat it like permission to celebrate with a lifestyle upgrade. Nicer apartment, luxury car, expensive habits justified by progress. Let me show you exactly what that costs. Someone builds their portfolio to $300,000. They're generating roughly $1,375 monthly in dividends. The system is working. They're 40% of the way to full salary replacement. Then they get a promotion and lease a $60,000 car with a $950 monthly payment. That $950, if invested instead, would generate an additional $52 per month in dividends immediately, growing over time. Over 10 years, that lease decision doesn't just cost $114,000 in payments, it delays their retirement timeline by approximately 3 years. 3 years of freedom, traded for a car that depreciates. This is an opportunity cost made visceral. Every expensive choice doesn't just cost money, it costs time. A purchase today can translate directly into months or years of extended work tomorrow. Seeing that clearly, without shame, changes decisions. It's not about deprivation. It's about seeing the price tag that isn't printed on the receipt. So let's reframe the whole goal. Replacing your salary with dividends isn't about waiting until some magical account balance appears. It's about building a specific, measurable monthly cash flow and protecting the timeline from interruption. It's about structuring a portfolio across sectors, utilities, consumer staples, healthcare, real estate, financials, so that no single event disrupts your income. It's about creating a system so reliable that the question shifts from, can I afford to retire, to, when do I want to? And here's the shift that compounds faster than the money itself. Once you see progress monthly, watching dividends grow from $300 to $600 to $1,200, time starts feeling different. You're not waiting decades in the dark. You're watching the system work in real time. That visibility creates confidence. Confidence creates discipline. Discipline creates consistency. And consistency, protected fiercely over years, creates freedom most people assume requires luck or inheritance. Imagine 12 years from now. It's a Tuesday morning. Your phone buzzes with a notification. $3,208 deposited. It's not a paycheck. It's dividends from a portfolio you built, share by share, month by month, protecting it from impulsive decisions and lifestyle inflation. And on that Tuesday, you realize work is now optional. Not because you hate your job, because you've built a choice. That version of you doesn't thank you for the luxury car or the expensive vacations you took along the way. They thank you for seeing the invisible threshold and choosing to cross it, for understanding that milestones aren't rewards, they're foundations. Recognizing that replacing your salary isn't about waiting for some distant age. It's about engineering a specific cash flow and refusing to let anything derail the timeline. This path isn't fast. It's not flashy, but it's real, and it's available to anyone willing to build it with patience, protect it with discipline, and measure it with clarity. Thanks for spending this time rethinking what financial independence actually requires. The timeline is shorter than you think. The path is clearer than you've been told. And the only question left is whether you're willing to see the target and build toward it deliberately. My name is Jordan. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.